Let's go ahead and get into our reading for today. So we're going to actually read the last section in Patterns in Communication, which is simply just on human communication. We want to learn how humans communicate using waves and patterns. So I'm going to read all 4 pages in this video. However, I do suggest you guys reread it once you watch the video so that you can have a better understanding if you missed something as I was reading, or if you want to take notes. Here are the directions. You can go ahead and click this link to get access to the book, and then these are the pages that you want to reread so that you can make sure you are answering these questions properly. I want to remind everybody that your learning is very important, so please make sure you are not cheating yourself by not reading the text, by not watching videos, and by clicking through answers, because that's not going to help you in the long run. We want to make sure you guys are prepared for the 5th grade, so you want yourself to be prepared for the 5th grade, so make sure you are putting in the work now. All right, let's go ahead and get into the text. I already have it open. We're going to pick up on human communication. I'm going to read the introduction, and I'm going to read it pretty quickly, which is why I'm suggesting you reread it, because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time reading it since you do have access to the text. As I am reading, please make sure you are not distracted. Make sure you are focused on the words that I'm reading, because the answers are going to be straight from the text. Introduction to Humans Communication. Humans communicate for many reasons: to share ideas or information, to persuade each other, to ask questions, to express feelings, and more. Over time, humans have developed many creative ways to communicate with others near and far. Recent technology advances have given us the ability to send messages across long distances quickly and clearly in ways that were not possible before. For instance, before telephones, we had to use written language to communicate across long distances, because sounds could only travel so far before degrading or breaking down. Now we can pick up the phone to talk to people far away, and they sound like they're standing right next to us. So this is sort of a privilege, you guys. Back in the day, like for real, back in the day, they used to, and we'll read into that as we get into the text a little further, they used to have to do a lot of different things and more difficult things to actually communicate with each other. And so we're very lucky to live in a world now that we have so many devices and so much technology that allows us to communicate very easily. I also like writing letters though, and I would suggest you guys do that now since we're in the house. Write a friend a letter, write a family member a letter, and mail it. I love writing letters. I think it's sort of cool getting the letter in the mail. So I definitely still write cards and things of that nature to communicate. But before, like my grandparents, they had to probably write a lot of letters to communicate with each other because they didn't have cell phones, right? So they and if they didn't have phones, they couldn't communicate the way we do. So I challenge us to sort of write somebody a letter. That would be cool. Continuing on with our reading. Our methods of communication often change as we develop new technology. However, all of our communication methods have something important in common. They rely on patterns. This is very important. So not only are the dolphins relying on patterns and sound waves, we also rely on patterns. Patterns that you're going to notice that we see every day, we just don't think about. Humans often use patterns called codes. This is very important. We have developed many different codes for communicating messages, such as visual symbols and patterns of tapping noises. Even language is a code. Words are sounds that mean something in the mind of the listener. When we speak to one another, we use patterns in our words that others can understand. So one of the connections that I'm making when we think of codes, you guys, when we do coding in computer, we know that engineers and techs are using coding to actually help us use technology or provide technology for us to use. But they're actually talking about some type of different coding, not technological coding, but actually coding in letters, and coding in words is also something different. So we're going to go ahead and flip the page. If they let me flip the page, they're not letting me flip the page. So let me go ahead and try to put in the number to flip the page. Here we go. Talking about language. And now, of course, I can't zoom in. What's happening to the book, you guys? All right. Language. These are the patterns that we're not going to, that exist, but we just don't think about on a daily basis. Humans all over the world use language to communicate with one another. There are thousands of languages in the world. Language can be communicated in writing, through speaking, or through gestures and body language. So just like hunched shoulders sort of can mean a few things, right? Oh, I don't care, or I don't know. So those are gestures and body language that they're talking about. Languages can be very different, but they all rely on patterns to communicate information. For instance, many written languages rely on alphabets. This is key information for your assignment. This book is written in a language called English, which relies on an alphabet of 26 letters. Combining the letters of an alphabet into patterns creates words and sentences, which we know. We just don't really think about the words that we're reading on this page as a pattern, but these letters are creating patterns, are creating words. Other languages rely on different kinds of patterns. The Chinese language uses symbols that represent parts of words or whole words. People who speak Chinese use combinations of these characters to convey messages to one another through writing. So this is an example of the Chinese language. So instead of using words like we or letters that create words, they use symbols that create words for their language. So again, I want to just sum up this paragraph for you for your assignment. We rely on alphabets to create these patterns, to create words that help us understand each other. That is the language that we use, which is called English. So we can use that language in writing or verbally. Coming over here to talking drums, this is something new. I didn't know this existed, so when I read it, I was like, okay. I didn't know drums could do this. In West Africa, long ago, people developed a way of communicating through drums. These drums are called talking drums because the sounds they make are similar to the patterns of spoken language. The sounds from the drums can have different pitches and can be played at different volumes. Key information right here for your assignment. A drummer can create different types of sounds by hitting a talking drum in different places with a drumstick, the palm of the hand, or the fingers. Drummers send information by making different patterns of sound, and these travel as sound waves over long distances. People can hear the drums from far away and understand a complicated message. Of course, people in West Africa today have many other ways to communicate across long distances, including computers and cell phones. However, many have kept the tradition of this unique form of communication. So if you're like me, you're thinking drums was more so of a musical instrument and was used to create beats and to create entertainment in Africa, but I didn't realize that drums would actually could create patterns to communicate and send messages to one another either. So that's some new information, some cool information. For you, you need to make sure you're remembering that to create those patterns, they can change the different pitches and volumes of a sound. Go ahead and turn the page. Now this is also sort of interesting. This is something new for me. I didn't know existed. A semaphore. And you're probably like, what's a semaphore? Well, we're going to learn what a semaphore is right now. In France and other countries in the early 1800s, people used a system for communicating over long distances called the semaphore. Notice this is a long time ago, you guys, so phones weren't nearly existing at this time. On hilltops, people would build towers that could be seen from far away. Each semaphore tower had long wooden boards on the top. I'm coming up to some key information that you're going to need to know for your assignment. A person would arrange the wooden boards in different shapes to send messages. Each shape represented a certain letter or number. People far away could see patterns in the shapes and understand the messages. So whereas we use letters and numbers and text messages and on the phone, they actually had to arrange these wooden boards to create the letters and numbers that they needed to send messages. Because a semaphore message is understood visually, this kind of message travels as light waves. So it doesn't travel as sound waves because there is no sound to be communicated, but light waves needed to travel for those boards to be seen. Sending a semaphore message was a lot faster than riding a horse over long distances to deliver a message in person. However, in bad weather, the semaphore tower and the position of the wooden boards could be hard to see, so the signal could sometimes be lost over long distances. So these are the moments that we may take for granted, but it's much better with us being able to use cell phones than trying to create messages using those boards like that. So making sure we are grateful for the technology that we have today.